Boys and girls, men and women, and miserable old codgers my age, 84 years old, I want to welcome you to Mullins Pond Deer Hunting Camp.
Always go back home this time of year. Always think of home many times a year. And if you want to come, I'll take you there.
My name is Earl Peckham, born in 1935. I just turned 84 years old. This camp was built in the late 40s by fellows coming back from World War II. The original building that we're in now was part of J.P. Lewis Paper Mill in Beaver Falls, New York. First year I come here was probably 1950 as a little kid with my father. And then I started coming up here in about 1958. And I shot my first deer up here in 1958 off a rock called Balance Rock. The main part of the cabin was the waiting room for the office. The three doors behind me are all bedrooms now, and they were offices themselves when the building was an office building. We could sleep 12 people downstairs, and we could sleep maybe 12 people upstairs, so we could sleep 24 people here on a weekend or during hunting season, Thanksgiving week. Some places, sometimes it was hard to find a place to sleep. I always slept out on the porch because of the smell of the pine trees, the waterfall, and it was just a serene and quiet place to sleep. I was very comfortable out there, although it got very cold. There was no shower here, so you would go down on the bridge like in the month of October and take a pail with you and strip down naked and get a pail of water from the creek, which was very cold, and do a complete wash. Later on, you would just wash your neck and stuff at the sink in your face out of a wash pan. It was kind of a tough way to live, but it's like people lived 100 years ago. Nobody had bathtubs or showers, and that's the way they cleaned up. Our bathroom is the outhouse, about 30 feet in back of the cabin. It's just a one-holer. When I was a kid, the farmers used to have a two-holer, but ours is only a one-holer. In the wintertime, it gets kind of cold out there, but that's the bathroom we have, an outhouse. When I first started coming up here, you backpacked in the last mile. We had to come in another way because there was no bridge. They had what they call a swamp buggy, and we bring a lot of stuff in on that. Then once we built the bridge, we could come in and drive right up to the cabin. So in the old days, people would come in and stay for a week because there was no really road in here. Now people just come in and spend the day and go home. So it's really killed the whole idea of having a cabin here because nobody really uses it. And it's not the fun it used to be. Now, I have a handkerchief here because one of my best hunting partners and friends died 2 weeks ago. And I really miss him. And you old codgers my age know what that is like, to have one of your best friends and hunting partners pass away a couple weeks before the season starts. Well, we've had years where it was so dry that the state would ban hunting. Other times it would rain like crazy. You know, every fall is different. Some years in October, the leaves were like going through a cathedral. It was just absolutely beautiful. One morning, Thanksgiving Day, we got up to hunt, and it was snowing like crazy. So we had breakfast and played cards. We got 4 foot of snow on the level. So we had to do a lot of shoveling and a lot of plowing to even get out of camp. I've been snowed in here for 3 or 4 days and have people come in with snow sleds to make sure I'm all right and to make sure I had enough supplies. The only 3 years that I've ever missed coming up here since like 54, 58 is I worked for Alaska Fish and Game. 3 months out of the year for 3 years, I took a leave of absence from my job at General Motors and worked for Alaska Fish and Game, doing weather research and taking salmon eggs. And them are the only 3 years that I've never came to this camp. When I was working for Alaska Fish and Game, I always wanted to grow a beard. Well, since we're out in the water in the boats and bad weather, I decided to grow a beard. Well, when I come back to New York, I was in a poker game, and this guy playing poker with me, his wife worked with a home for the elderly. And he said, "My wife Santa Claus got sick. Could you play Santa Claus?" Well, the girl I was married to at the time made me a Santa Claus, actually a Father Christmas outfit. I'm more of a Father Christmas than a Santa Claus. I went to that nursing home and played Santa Claus to all the kids and grandmas and grandpas and had a great time. Well, it just grew into something where I would go to people's houses at Christmas time, play Santa Claus. I would go to hospitals, children that were sick. I would do all kinds of things like that. You know, at Christmas time, to put a smile on a sick kid's face is unbelievable. It's playing Santa Claus has its good sides and bad sides. If you got a young child sitting on her lap, on your lap, you don't, with mom there, you don't say, "Where's Dad?" because he starts screaming, they're getting divorced. So you learn not to ask some kind of questions. The part of Santa Claus I had to play was a friend of mine, Thomas Danaher. His 12-year-old granddaughter was dying of cancer. Well, I went up to the house Christmas Eve and went in there and played Santa Claus to her. She had a chemo pump on at the time, and she had no hair. Well, I had an extra Santa Claus hat in my Santa Claus toy bag, and I got this hat out, and I say, "Mrs. Claus made this hat especially for you." and she wants you to have it, to enjoy Christmas with. She died 3 months later, and she wore that hat every day till the day she died. After playing Santa Claus to her, I left the house and went out in my car, and I cried for 20 minutes to half an hour. Putting a smile on a kid's face that you know they're gonna die. So that's the hard part about playing Santa Claus, is going to the hospital and playing Santa Claus to people and kids that just aren't gonna make it. And you gotta just be yourself and smile and laugh and ho-ho and give them the greatest Christmas you could ever give them. And that's the hardest part about playing Santa Claus. The most fun part of playing Santa Claus was flying into Lewiston by helicopter. I went out to the airport and said to the guy at the airport, I'm supposed to meet somebody here and fly in a helicopter to Lewiston. And this guy says, you ain't flying in any helicopter today, it's snowing. The phone rang. It's the chopper pilot. And the guy said, Santa Claus is here, and he said, if he wants to fly, I'll fly him. So out comes the pilot, we get in the helicopter. You can't believe what it's like flying 120 miles an hour in a snowstorm. It was unbelievable. I had second thoughts when I found this. I found out that this guy was an ex-British commando. So I didn't think he had all the screws. But anyway, we approached Lewiston, and they had set railroad flares in the snowbanks, and we landed in the park. And when we were coming down, must have been 1,000 people there. And I'm thinking, don't fall down, whatever you do in front of all them kids. So we get out of the helicopter and we get on, they put me on top of a fire truck. I don't know whose idea that was, but you try to stand on a fire truck full of holes, you could hardly stand up, almost fell off the fire truck. Well, then we went down to the gazebo, and they were playing Christmas music, and the helicopter pilot was down there. And I'm standing behind these two women, and one of the girls had did the thing for Lewiston, the whole thing, and the other girl says to her, where did you get such a wonderful Santa Claus? And the other woman says, it's my ex-husband. I was hunting up here with Gary Terry. We call him GT. Sunday night, GT said, I'm going to be going to a funeral. I will be back Monday night. Well, at 6 o'clock in the morning, GT left to pick up his wife to go to the funeral. And I went to the outhouse. On the way back from the outhouse, I slipped on it was snow. I slipped on some moss and a rock and broke my femur. Well, when you're laying there seeing your leg at a right angle to your body, it almost makes you sick to your stomach. I crawled to the lower part of the cabin. The lower part of the cabin we never heated. Well, luckily I'd left the door open. Well, I crawled into the lower part of the cabin. I lost both my shoes in the snow. I tried to crawl up the steps into the cabin. I couldn't get up the steps that were very steep. So I had a small penknife, which my buddy Charlie Evans had given me years ago. And there was some kitchen chairs with some pads on it. And I cut them off, and I laid them on the floor. And there was a big piece of cardboard box. So I took that and I cut that. And I laid it up against the wall, and I made a nest, and I threw part of my broken leg up against that box so it was out of the way. And I made a nest, and I laid there, and I was watching the thermometer. The thermometer got between 10 and 40 degrees above zero. Gary Terry was supposed to be back Monday night. They got snowed in at the funeral. He didn't get back. He said, I want to stop at the cabin to see Earl before we go home. His wife said, I'm tired, let's just go straight home. So they didn't come to the cabin. Well, I laid there till Thanksgiving morning, 4 days, with nothing to eat or drink. When they found me, my blood pressure was 60/40. My diabetes was over 500, which I thought that not eating at all, I wouldn't have any problem. I hear somebody come across the bridge Thanksgiving morning. One of the fellas who was going to have Thanksgiving dinner with his mother and father-in-law and his wife at the father-in-law's house wanted to come to camp and hunt in the morning. So he came to camp. I heard his truck come across the bridge, and I'm thinking, boy, I'm saved. Then I heard him park his truck, get on his four-wheeler, and he took off hunting. So now, here I am laying there, right? And I'm about half out of my mind, to tell you the truth. So, on the way back, he happened to see camp, and he noticed the back door was open. So, he come up to camp in the lower part and found me. And he thought somebody beat me up and robbed me. And I said, no, I broke my femur. Well, he went to the nearest area and called his father-in-law, and they come up with the ambulance from Krogan, New York. Well, they come all the way back into this area, and a state trooper happened to hear about it, and he was coming back with them, and they weren't going to cross the bridge with the ambulance, and the trooper said, hey, we're going across the bridge. And the trooper come across the bridge and parked his car on this big rock outside the cabin, and they come in and got me with a stretcher, which was no easy job. Well, I'm laying there. Well, when this young kid found me, I said, go into my room and get all the hand warmers you can. And we activated them, and I put them down my shirt. All I had on was a pair of jeans and a Pendleton wool shirt. So we just filled my whole thing up with hand warmers. Well, then about an hour and a half later, the ambulance got here, maybe an hour later. They had to come a long way, Thanksgiving Day. So I hadn't had anything to eat since Sunday, and they took me to the trauma center Thanksgiving Day, and then they tried to, I didn't feed me, they just give me ice cubes, and they wouldn't feed me because they didn't know how they were gonna operate on my leg. And until they decided what they were gonna do, they weren't gonna operate. Well, they didn't operate till Saturday or Sunday. And then Saturday or Sunday, they decided to operate, and they put a plate in my leg and a bunch of screws. And then I had something to eat Sunday night, but I went for a week without any food. They fed me intravenously, of course, but all I had for water was ice cubes. But the bottom line is, when you see or hear and read about on TV all these survival things, they never talk about one thing. I was there for 2 days. I pissed my pants twice. Well, let me tell you something. When it's 10 degrees above zero and you piss your pants, for about 5 minutes, it's a warm feeling. After that, boy, it is not good. And I did that twice. So twice I had a warm feeling before I froze my butt off again. But I've told them all, if I'm going to die, I'd rather die here than die in Florida, because it's so peaceful and serene. This is the place to go. You can't buy this kind of peace and quiet. This is nature. This is the way it should be.
Life is much easier out in the woods, and I'm fine with that. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Oh, I'm fine with that. Build me a fire, watch the wind blow through the trees, and feel If I go to the woods and never come back, I'd be fine with that. Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine with that.